1, live. Welcome to the final day of the DCG's first virtual FutureTech week. Today we plan to put user needs first through intelligent product development. Stepping up to the challenge of delighting users and bridging every divide in society through superlative product development is no mean feat. To help demystify the black arts of intelligent product development with science and professional insight, I'm delighted to be joined by Leah and Johnny from I2 Media at Goldsmiths, Will and Dan from the DIMPACT project led by Carnstone and the University of Bristol, and Gavin and Alex from Freeview Digital UK. User impact is the theme, with I2 talking about audience impact, Will and Dan talking about sustainability impact, and Gavin and Alex showcasing the impact of accessible EPGs on Freeview. In a moment, I'm going to ask each of our product development alchemists to introduce themselves as they speak. But first, a bit of housekeeping. Keep our experts on their toes by asking difficult and intriguing questions in the Q&A box under this window. And click on the resources section for deeper insights and to register for our Exec Ed program. That's it for me for the moment. There'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions as we go. Now, please welcome Professor Jonathan Freeman and Leah Kurta from I2 Media at Goldsmiths.
Thank you, Richard. So first off, I'll introduce myself. I'm Professor Johnny Freeman. I'm Managing Director of I2 Media, which is Goldsmiths' spin-off company. And I'm also academic lead for Knowledge Exchange at Goldsmiths, where I've been for the last 20 years. Before I start, just a quick welcome to all the MSc psychology students from Goldsmiths who I think are watching live from a lecture theatre in the Richard Hogarth building. So hello to you. And really just want to say what a pleasure it is to be here with you all. So what we're going to be talking about today is I2's method to evaluate impact of media experiences and how to optimize that experience using our psychologically based theory and model of impact. Do we think we work in TV? Well, we all do work in the TV industry, but the TV industry is now more it's playing okay? Yeah. The TV industry is now more converged than ever before. We've been working over the last 25 years to understand audience experience of converged media experiences. And more recently with the DTG, we've been looking at the future of the TV landscape in relation to personalised advertising and personalised experiences, discovery, and the opportunities that 5G provide to innovate the audience experience. So Richard mentioned the whole theme is about impact of this session, and we're going to talk about impact ourselves. But what actually is an impactful experience in the context of a fully converged media experience? I'm going to pass that question to Leah.
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here today. So my name's Leah Kurta, I'm Innovation Lead at I2 Media. I work across our research projects, but also I look at how the research can inform new products and services, and that's exactly what we have here with the impact method. So the impact method essentially is a distillation of 6 critical factors in psychology which are really important to the user's experience. In fact, these are the factors, and we're going to walk you through them in a moment, which lead audiences to be much more engaged in your products and experiences, and importantly, more likely to pay more for them. So over the last 20 years, we've been working in the converged technology space. So we've really chosen the factors that are the most important in order to kind of reduce the amount of noise that you're going to be, that you have to sort of wade through. We understand that when you're innovating, whether that's on content formats or whether that's in new distribution methods or thinking about different context of viewership, there can be a lot of different factors at play when we think about users' experience. So the impact method is really about reducing them down into these 6 critical ones. In terms of the kind of broader delivery for the impact method, this is an executive training program And it's a new step-by-step process that we walk you through. We want to give you new tools in order to help you align your teams around the key strengths and weaknesses in your products and services. And importantly, it's really designed to complement any other project management strategies that you might be using, such as Agile. Maybe some of you are familiar with Lean UX techniques, or you use design thinking and follow usability and accessibility principles. And the impact method is really designed to help you understand the why behind those different methods. So they sort of focus on the how. The rooting in psychology for the impact method is really going to help you to understand what's going on for the users at that psychological level, and hopefully to help you spot mistakes before they happen. So I think now Johnny is going to walk you through the process of the training program that we run.
Thanks, Leah. Okay, so the impact process, our impact model sits in the middle of our understanding of what is user experience. And our definition of user experience spans the whole service experience, from when you first hear about a product or service until you're recommending it to your friends, having engaged with it and used it. And we use a tool called the Impact Canvas, which is available to you as a free download after this session or during this session. Basically, the Impact Canvas itself covers all elements that we ask our clients or are asked by our clients to think about for them or to work with them in defining. So always maintaining value, sensitivity in our design. First off, it's identifying the user experience challenge. It's identifying who your audience is, the key elements of the user experience, checking that heuristics and best practice are properly implemented, and what we're focusing on today, identifying the success measures and how to ideate to address those as effectively as possible. And from that, we then generate research questions which can be tested with end users, with your customers, your target audience, in order to check that you are meeting their needs. So just to walk you through the impact model itself, this is it on screen now, and you can see that IMPACT is actually an acronym for interesting, meaningful, personal, affective, collective, and transportive. And our model has demonstrated that they all contribute to a user's quality of experience, and that quality of experience is then quite reliably related to an audience's willingness to pay. One thing I always want to point out here is that this feels probably to those of you who are interested in more transactional web-based services, this could feel a little bit experiential and focused on giving people a brilliant experience when actually they may just want to buy something quickly or search for something quickly. One of the points we make about this is that the impact dimensions, so interesting, meaningful, personal, affective, collective, and transportive, actually apply even to those really transactional elements. So if something is a transactional experience and it isn't quick and easy and friction-free, key heuristics obviously, then it's not going to be meaningful for audience members in that context. So we see the model as applying across both transactional and experiential experiences. And I'm going to go to the next slide. Leah.
Okay, so as Johnny said, he's walked you through the key dimensions in the impact model. And on the slide here, you can see our impact canvas. Now, this is what is available to you as a free download, which is in the resources section. So really encourage you to check that out. And we're going to walk you through just a few examples from the TV industry as use cases and how you might apply that to different programs that you may be developing. And really the aim of the canvas is to ask you some sort of simple but critical questions about your content in order that you can evaluate it from a range of perspectives. So thinking about all of these different dimensions, because the important thing to note is that you might be strong in one dimension, but if you're weaker in another, all of these dimensions actually kind of work together in order to improve the user's experience. So we'd really encourage you to strengthen and ideate around all of these different dimensions. And again, that is really to help you kind of spot mistakes early in the process, and cut through the noise, the different discussions that you might be having, and really kind of focusing on those ones that are the most important and relate to these particular dimensions. So let's think now about showing you some examples of how this works in practice. We'll go through some use cases from the TV industry, and this QR code will link you to the free download, but as I say, it's also in your resources, so it might be easier just to go there and you can download the canvas and use it for yourselves. The first example I want to highlight, though, is on the affective dimension. So by affective, what we mean is the emotional journey that the user goes through. So it's important to know that within a user's experience, a sort of heightened state of emotion is beneficial, and that can be emotions such as kind of happiness and joyful experiences, but it can also be those that are kind of more around sort of jeopardy and fear, have a sort of varied emotional experience. And we're sort of drawing your attention to the circle as an innovative piece of programming which really kind of did well on this dimension. I'm sure you guys are all aware of the circle already, but in case not, it was a sort of a little bit like Big Brother, but much more kind of around social media, where the players in the game could either pretend to be people that they weren't, or they could represent their true selves. So that kind of had this for audiences. Audiences were also able to vote, so they could vote people in and out, but they could also vote for which players kind of got power over others. So a really kind of engaging emotional experience for both audiences and the contestants. So it did sort of particularly well in this dimension. But then if we look at the personalised dimension, that's the P from the impact model, it's perhaps not the most personalised experience for audiences. Now, when audiences were engaging, they were voting based on the collective. So the collective had the power to make the decisions. But as an individual audience member, I may not have had very much power in that. But perhaps there's a way to personalise it a little more, offering audiences perhaps the chance to pay for power. That's an option. Or maybe I could be rewarded if I'd been a really loyal audience member, and so I get some kind of personal control over the TV show. Okay, we're going to move on to collective now. So Johnny, I think it's back to you.
That's back to me. Thank you, Leah. Okay, so what we're doing here is from the IMPACT of the impact model, we're walking through a couple of examples. So you heard Leah talking about affective and personalised there in relation to the circle. In terms of collective, what do we mean by that? Well, recent research we've done in the Audience of the Future performance demonstrator has revealed just how important being together with other audience members is for audience participation, and for a sense of togetherness, a sense of liveness, and a sense of a positive, meaningful experience. And recognising this during lockdown, two brands have done a really good job looking at it through our impact model lens to try and generate that collective experience. The first is Secret Sofa, which is trying to create at home the experience of the immersive cinema experience that Secret Cinema ran. And they were trying to recreate elements of the collective experience, but the live experience, the immersed experience, the ritual, that's the word I was looking for, the ritual of going to the Secret Cinema experience. So they were encouraging you to watch at the same time, to order Haagen-Dazs ice cream for the experience, and they were also encouraging you to familiarise yourself with the content. They also encourage connection by a third-party application, so you were advised to find your video source and then connect via Zoom or WhatsApp or anything else. Netflix Party, again, trying to enable simultaneous viewing, and again, it was very popular during lockdown when people weren't able to actually be together to chill. They had to do it virtually using Netflix Party. So that's great, but what could they have done better? And the whole point of using the impact model is to try and make it clearer to brands and products and service and platform developers how they could make the experience better on any of the dimensions of the impact model. We've picked for this same example of Secret Sofa and Netflix the transportive dimension. And here specifically, where we recognised through a critical analysis of the experience that actually the proxies they were trying to create were pretty weak proxies for the rituals in real life. So if you go to secret cinema in reality, you get dressed up. The whole set is dressed in the experience in the style of the film. So whether it's Moulin Rouge or Blade Runner, you ended up in Bohemian Paris or 2019 LA as the film was set. And it's a really weak continuation of that to take that to those same experiences at home. So what else could they have done? Well, we would interview audience members and target audience members to understand, well, what are the elements that are most easily transferable? Some of them are really obvious. The dressing up, the costumes you can normally buy to go and attend secret cinema, you could have been enabled for Secret Sofa in just the same way. So between them, Netflix and Secret Sofa got a lot of things right about both collective and transportive. But if they'd have both learned from each other, they could have actually done better than either of them did. I think the next slide. Oh, in terms of who's done transportive really well, this is me again, isn't it? Yep. And it's talking about the immersive viewing of football matches, and whether it's Sky's VR, whether it's the BT Sport 360 view of the film, of the live match experience, you get a really clear immersive sense by either within headset or Google Cardboard or holding the screen quite close to your eyes. You choose your viewpoint and you can get access to additional analytics. So they do that really well. But what do those services not do as well, Leah?
Yes, so in terms of the impact model, we looked at the affective dimension. So again, that's the emotional experience of users who are using VR headsets to experience sport. And actually, it made me think about my dad. He's an avid Arsenal fan, and when Arsenal scores a goal, he runs from one end of the living room to another, shouting and screaming, and that would be a pretty prohibitive experience if you tried to do that in a VR headset. He'd probably crash into a wall. And so actually, sometimes the technology is an obstruction to our emotional journey. And so, if we were thinking about how could we improve on this, potentially we're going to have to wait until lighter weight headsets are available, or, think about different formats such as AR. It might be that is kind of easier to translate the emotional experience. But also when we think about the 360 aspect of these experiences, with being able to look all around, it's quite easy then also to miss aspects of the experience. So in order to have the kind of emotional journey that a football fan might expect, you might need to give them additional cues if they are using this kind of much more immersed headset experience. So I hope that through that little walkthrough, it gives you a bit of an idea as to how you would use the impact canvas in practice. We didn't have very long today. There's much more to it, but that's just a little taster. If you're interested in our executive training course, then we have a link to express your interest in the resource pack, and it's available as a bespoke session, so we can run these with your teams as private sessions, or you can book more onto an open course. So that would be with fellow colleagues in the industry, and we really do tailor it to your specific use cases. It's an interactive session, so you get plenty of time with myself and Johnny to work through your particular challenges. So yeah, hopefully that's been of interest. Please feel free to ask us any questions in the Q&A. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, Johnny and Leah. Very interesting and insightful. We've got some questions coming through, but if you could keep the questions coming, I think we'll save some of those for the end. So please, I'm sure there are lots of questions on how we leverage these insights to kind of drive our profits, I guess, in many ways, but also ensure that consumers and viewers are satisfied. A quick question for me: the market appears to be much more complex and difficult to kind of master than ever. Are you seeing a better application of science on kind of user experience and product development than you used to see because of the kind of fierce competition in the market? Johnny?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think what we've seen especially over the last year or two, there's been a lot of competition, and there's also been a lot of change in consumer behaviour as a result of lockdown. And I know other DTG sessions have discussed that. We've had an incredibly strong focus on it in our work on the Audience of the Future performance demonstrator, which is one of our big projects at the moment funded by Innovate UK. And back in March, we had magnificent plans to have a live, immersive, theatrical experience of Midsummer Night's Dream at Midsummer in Stratford, with some of the best immersive innovators in the land. And that became obviously impossible with COVID. And so what we did instead was to really dive deep into consumers' consciousness to understand, well, what are they feeling at the moment? What do they need? And how their behaviour is changing? And at next week's Beyond conference at AHRC, we're going to go into a lot of detail on the results from that. But the big things we identified were that even those segments of the population who weren't previously particularly digitally literate and weren't particularly au fait with technology were relying on it more and enjoying their experience of it a lot more. So people logging on to YouTube to watch live theatre for the first time, for example. The other is that we're getting more and more service providers, and it's everything from parking apps to mobile phone, video delivered on mobile phone, wanting to understand what type of audience member each of their audiences is, and then customizing and personalizing the recommendations and the content, the options, and sometimes even the pricing to them based on that understanding.
Thanks, Johnny. A quick question for Leah. Leah, do you think that users are open to these kind of new experiences and very different ways of consuming content?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, building on what Johnny said, in our recent segmentation of audiences, we see quite the range of levels of interest. I think people are much more interested in, stepping outside of their comfort zone, particularly because of the pandemic. So, sort of older, more traditional audiences may have become sort of familiar with some of the more kind of everyday technologies like Zoom or watching things on YouTube. But those people that were more comfortable with technology are much more willing to sort of push the boundaries. There's much more, there's a lot of positivity towards experiences that are not simply passive experiences. So much more sort of, much more interaction and engagement. And I think a real interest in the immersive technologies as well. So whether that's VR or AR experiences, whether that's in home or on location. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of appetite across the board, and I think that will only increase sort of as these technologies become more commonplace.
Great. Look, thank you so much, I2. I know there's a lot more behind this, so I kind of encourage people to put some questions in the question and answer box, but also engage kind of further, because I think the rewards from intelligent product design and bearing all this in mind, I think are very significant. So thank you both very much. We'll come back with some more questions at the end. I'll come up with some more tricky ones. Okay, so next, please welcome Pickett from Carnstone and Daniel Schien from the University of Bristol, who are going to talk about the impact of sustainability. So Will, welcome.
Great. Hi. Thanks, Richard. And hi, everyone. Really great to be here today. So my name's Will. I'm from Carnstone. We're a management consultancy specializing in sustainability and corporate responsibility. Some of you may have heard of us as we run something called the Responsible Media Forum, which is a group of around 25 media companies looking to take action on the social and environmental issues facing the sector. We do spend a lot of our time on one-to-one engagement with our clients, but we also play a role as sort of convener of companies around particular sustainability challenges. And that's really where DIMPACT comes in, and what the DTG team have really kindly asked us to speak about today. So DIMPACT's a project we've been working on over the past 18 months in partnership with Dan and his team at the University of Bristol, as well as the 9 media companies involved. So I'll just pass over to Dan so that he can introduce himself and take you through some more of the details of the project.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, my name is Daniel Schien. I'm a senior lecturer in computer science at the University of Bristol, where I'm part of a group that really focuses on sustainability of digital media and has done so over the past 10 years. We initially did work with the Guardian newspaper, later with the BBC, and had great contacts with Carnstone and the Responsible Media Forum, who a couple of years ago already got interested in our work. And 2 years ago, we reviewed the plans, or reviewed our mutual interest in better understanding the energy consumption and associated carbon emissions from the delivery and consumption of digital media. Because from our experience doing the research work and from Carnstone's experience working with the professionals in these organizations, it is clear that there's a lack of understanding and transparency around these issues. So the first problem is that we are living in an uncertain world with climate change, and we want to know what is the energy and carbon emissions and the climate impacts for everything that we do in our lives, including the consumption of digital media. And associated to this and alongside comes the desire to better report on those. Digital media is definitely included in this. And these reports are they should cover activities across the entire value chain. So we look at the digital delivery system starting in the data center that usually is in the cloud, including networks and everything that is happening in the home. So it's an end-to-end perspective. We know this is and this is not something that came along with COVID, that there's an increased consumption of digital media, and there's a desire to understand the implications of this increased consumption on the energy consumption and the carbon footprint. And so this is one of the things we were looking at. Now, understanding environmental impact is something that is not new. Many different sectors in the economy have been really doing great work on transparency and assessments of carbon emissions. But the digital world is just as complex as many other supply chain systems. But the knowledge of methods and the data that is needed in order to carry out these assessments is still lacking. That's why we researchers come in, because what we bring is an understanding of the computer science from our training, but we pair this with experience and methods and skills in environmental assessment. And lastly, engaging in DIMPACT is born out of an opportunity and an observed risk at the moment of not engaging. And this risk becomes ever more present because we're seeing there's an increased scrutiny of the carbon emissions associated with, for example, streaming. You may have seen some of the headlines that we have captured here. At the moment, the situation is that there is very little data and knowledge about the real impact associated to, for example, consuming Netflix, and this is something that the absence of this knowledge drives concern and fear, and that's not a great situation to have, a great position for any company to be in, and we want to help address this lack of knowledge and transparency. So what is DIMPACT? Will, I put you in charge. So what is DIMPACT? Firstly, DIMPACT is an online tool. It's a web application that anyone, in particular sustainability practitioners in organizations, can go to and carry out an assessment for their specific organization based on their own company's data. It's treated in a very secure way, in a private way. If you bring the data into the platform, it's yours alone, and it's not shared with anyone else. But it gives you the tools to carry out this assessment, and then derive a reporting breakdown of where in your value chain, we speak of a product system, energy consumption takes place, where the hotspots are, etc., and you can report on that. It comes in a format that you can then use in reporting. Secondly, DIMPACT is a collaborative project. By bringing together these organizations, together with us from the university, bringing our own perspective, we experience a lot of knowledge exchange. The organizations that we work with, they're interested in the process of working with the tool, and they derive a lot of knowledge from this and a lot of insight that is engaging stakeholders within those organizations that goes beyond just the reporting. And from a commercial perspective, it's a subscription-based model that is available to any company that could benefit from using the tool. So because we are focusing on digital media companies, that's where the emphasis is. Okay, Will. So where in terms of process, if you engage with DIMPACT, what are the things what are the processes that have been going on in the past that have taken us where we are today? So the first thing that we did was going into the organizations that have partnered with DIMPACT initially and engage with their technical teams to understand how their product system is working. And that means knowing in the data centers that are often in the cloud, what sort of server applications from a very high level functional perspective are in there, and then over what types of networks these the digital services are delivered. So this would be core networks in the internet, access networks, cellular networks for mobile devices, etc. Map this out and based on user analytics, develop a broad overview over all of the types of user devices. So then we have this map of the product systems. Then we bring background data in that describes, for example, the energy consumption in the shared networks, and once this is in place, then DIMPACT comes up with a ranked order of the energy consumption and carbon emissions over the value chain that allows the participants to identify the hotspots. This is where we are already. And going forward, we are working on additional features that are enabling the use of the tool to then forecast carbon emissions and changes to the carbon emissions when you're making certain changes to the services, to further enable strategy and decision making. Okay, so here's another breakdown of the DIMPACT project. We started in August 2019 with 9 partner organizations that were very deeply involved in the development of DIMPACT. And we began with a generic development of modules. I'll start talking about the modules in a moment, which we then further customized for the individual participants. And after a pilot phase, we have arrived at a working prototype that can be used for reporting already. That's in place. And at the moment, we are in a second phase where we are expanding the functionality of the model. We are thinking about new capability. We're adding new capability. And I'm happy to go into detail after, for example, in the question time. And another important area that we're engaging in at the moment is bringing in additional organizations, popularizing the DIMPACT platform internationally in order to engage companies that haven't heard of it and can benefit from it. Okay. So here's an overview of the current modules, and modules largely equates to product systems that can be assessed. And I guess in particular for the audience here, it's the TV broadcasting and streaming that is relevant. But we also have modules in place that allow these assessments to be carried out for digital publishing, online banner advertising, and business intelligence services. And as I said, one of the activities that are currently ongoing is the expansion of the set of modules that we provide and that organizations can then use to assess the carbon emissions for services. And also listed here is the set of participants that were engaging in the initial phase. So we have the BBC and ITV and Sky, notably, as the organizations that have shaped the TV broadcasting and streaming model. And what we have constructed is a superset of the technical processes that are relevant for video streaming, and this includes, from our perspective, everything that most companies that are here will need. There's a capability to add custom processes to such a model, but I think we can very rapidly make the model available and workable for the majority of TV broadcasting services. Okay, so I want to quickly illustrate how this works. This may be a bit nebulous for someone who's not intimately familiar with the delivery of digital video streaming services. I don't think it's too technical. There are a lot of boxes here, but if you allow me to quickly walk through those, you will see you will probably find them all familiar. So this is not one of the DIMPACT modules. This is taken from one of the research papers that we have published last year at the International Conference for Computer-Human Interaction, and it's a model that represents the processes, some high-level processes that take place when YouTube streaming services are delivered. And the DIMPACT video streaming service model is, of course, a lot more detailed. This is much more coarse-grained, but it is here in order to illustrate the building blocks. So this is this illustration here starts with the data center in the top, and this includes encoding activities, includes blending advertisement into the stream. It's the place where user analytics are captured or stored and analyzed. Then the bit stream is delivered over networks, the internet network, if you want to call it that, to content delivery services, CDNs, which are servers close to where the audience is in order to deliver streams quickly and not be subject to latency in the network, to a delay, but have a great user experience. Coming back to that, a very important topic. From those CDN servers, the content then goes via another layer of networking, for example, mobile networks, to mobile devices, handhelds and smartphones, or via wired access networks, cable, fiber, and DSL networks to the whole other platforms that we are commonly consuming video streaming services across. So IP, set-top boxes, smart TVs, games consoles connected to televisions, or computers and desktops. So these type of devices are all included in any of the DIMPACT models always, but to a much greater granularity. So what we do is we work with the colleagues in the organizations capturing the user analytics, and we know for each of the type of devices here from how many sessions were played out, for what duration and in what global region. So we can take into account the variation of carbon intensity in the electricity that is consumed when a device is on and playing out a certain stream, for example. But on a very high level, it's the construction of these maps here that is one of the first steps that takes place for each module, and this is what then will be combined with background data. So, for example, the characterization of the energy intensity for networks, plus the specific data that any company will bring in. I just mentioned analytics data that describes the number of sessions and duration of sessions. This is one example of data that a company would bring in themselves when they're using the tool to calculate their assessment. But they also would want to bring in specific data about the data center, for example. And I mentioned here on the left some of the benefits of working with a tool such as DIMPACT is that once you have populated the model and carried out an assessment for yourself, you can return to this model year on year. And the only things that need to be updating are those that have changed in your organization, and you don't need to worry about starting from scratch or updating background data, because that's something that we do for the parts that are generic. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Will, I realize my webcam has turned off, and that's because it's got too hot. But I'll be working on this for the panel discussion, and so you will be seeing me then. No worries.
Thank you very much, Will and Dan. There's a little bit of irony there that your webcam's overheated talking about sustainability. A quick question from me is, it's an incredibly complex area to measure energy consumption across the increasingly complex distribution chain of television and media. It's great that you've kind of begun to set out a framework for that now. Do you think that audiences and viewers and users truly understand the impact of leaving their routers on and which platforms they use and how many devices they use yet?
I'm so sorry. It just cut out. Would you mind repeating the last part of your question?
No problem at all. I was just saying, is it super complex the way we distribute content these days? And do you think audiences have any ideas of the impact that leaving their router on and using multiple devices and 4,000 nit television screens, etc., have on the carbon consumption?
Yeah, I think two things are important here. One is that there are some members of the audience that are technical and engaged on these topics, and they have some understanding of these supply chain systems. But unless you engage with this topic so deeply as we do, then the knowledge of the energy consumption of those different system parts usually isn't there. And I don't judge anyone for this. But the more problematic is that some the other audience members who very rightly don't have the capacity to engage with this topic, they will be frightened from some of the recent messaging around the streaming will kill your planet, for example, might be one of the headlines that you might see. And that's very dangerous. And I think that's one of the things that we want to eliminate. We want to address the lack of transparency and the lack of knowledge with robust data to give everyone who is interested in energy consumption and carbon emissions the right data to make decisions for themselves. And at the moment, that's not there.
Yeah, I think it's important. I guess it'll evolve over time, and I'd certainly encourage industry and the audience here today to engage further on this subject. I think it's a critical issue for us going forward, and it is very tricky to measure. And my guess is far more energy is being used by people having multiple routers in their homes than it is from their actual media consumption. So I think it's very important that we see this holistically. Is Will back with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you. I couldn't see you. From your perspective, kind of what happens next? How do you kind of take this project forward?
Well, yeah, there's a few things going on. The first thing really is sort of helping the companies that have come on board and help us develop the prototype to actually use the DIMPACT tool for reporting. So that's really the first step, and that's sort of our, we've developed the tool, and it's now just, the proof is people using it for keeps, really. The other things that we're working on, as Dan mentioned in the presentation, is that we're kind of looking at ways of the tool to run sort of scenarios. So comparing sort of the input of two different sort of options, if you like, and looking at the different carbon impacts. And I think that's probably quite relevant for this panel, really, is kind of, being able to use this as kind of, as a design tool, if you like, as opposed to just a measuring tool. The other thing is, there's also certain bits of data and other organizations that we wish to kind of engage more meaningfully, I think, as part of this next phase. So those are companies sort of like your AWSs and sort of the organizations that are cut through the value chain, just to sort of understand sort of their perspective on these kind of issues and sort of share data and understand the systems in a bit more detail. Yeah, they're the main things that we're looking at doing. I'm not sure if I've missed anything, Dan, but...
No, this is great. And I'm sure we can come back to more in the panel discussion.
Yeah, great. We've got one question that's come through that's asking what incentive does a company have to explore this besides kind of the moral incentive that we all share? Is it in anticipation of governments cracking down in the future? Wondering this because it's not easy public-facing issue for consumers to demand.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing is that a lot of companies are now setting net zero targets, which requires that they reduce their emissions as much as possible throughout their entire value chain, and then whatever emissions are left over, they offset. So this becomes quite important to understand the full sort of footprint, if you like, of an organization. I mean, I guess it's only an incentive if you have set the net zero target, or something, or an ambitious, say, science-based target. And sorry if I'm getting too carbon technical for everybody. But I'm sure you would have seen the headlines about sort of companies like ITV setting very ambitious targets. But I think the other component is just actually the incentive is really to sort of have reliable figures on this, because I think that if you don't sort of figure it out yourself in a sort of a reliable way, or through something like DIMPACT, you can see that the narrative gets hijacked, as we showed on our slides, the kind of the sort of the messaging, as Dan mentioned, about sort of the impacts of something like streaming. So it's the incentive really is to understand it, and at least understand the breakdown of it as well, so you can do something about it.
Great. Well, look, Will, Dan, thank you. Well done. Thank you very much for your insights, and we'll come back to this, I'm sure, in the Q&A, and I'm sure very much in the years ahead. So thank you so much. Next, please welcome Gavin and Alex Krastev from Digital UK, who are going to showcase the impact of an accessible EPG at Freeview. So please welcome Alex and Gavin. Gavin, are you there?
Yes, didn't press the right button. So yeah, we're going to go. So today, Alex and I are going to just give you a bit of an update and an overview of the Accessible TV Guide, what it is, and how we went about creating it. So We launched the Accessible TV Guide after 18 months of development on the 20th of October, and we're all extremely proud of it at the moment. It's a HBB TV application, which is delivered through channel 555 on the Freeview DTT network. It's currently a completely free service, and it's available on 53% of our Freeview Play devices. So the 4 key benefits of the Accessible TV Guide is to give a consistent user experience for users to discover content in an accessible way. It's completely free, so the cost, it's ready to go. You don't have to do any updates to any software or any devices. You just have to tune into the channel 555. And it's customizable to the user's needs. So the users can discover content that's available for them in subtitles or the description or sign language through a filtering feature within the application. Digital UK is the largest DTT TV platform in the UK. And we work with all manufacturers bar one, and with over 75 different variations of devices. It takes a lot of time and effort for us to support and manage those services in a horizontal platform. So with Ofcom's 2018 requirements for accessibility, we took it upon ourselves to deliver a product on behalf of all of our manufacturing partners for the platform, and made sure that the Accessible TV Guide was delivering on the 4 main requirements, which is rendering text to speech, highlighting and filtering of content for access services, having an enlarged display, and also having a high contrast UI so users with visual impairments can see it a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to hand over to Alex, and he'll give you a bit of an overview of how we went about developing it.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. My name is Alex Krastev, and I'm currently heading the UI UX design in Digital UK/Freeview. I've been working in the TV industry for the past 8 and something years, and been developing UIs for a variety of devices and applications as well. So this is my main specialization right now, and which ended me up in Digital UK. The Accessible TV Guide is, as Gavin said, was a very big project and very involved as well. In the beginning, when we started working and thinking about it, we tried to investigate and understand how this is implemented on a variety of devices across the industry, it seemed like a lot of the implementations were lacking in different aspects, providing the best possible experience for impaired users, mainly because they were trying to adapt existing interfaces to become accessible by changing the color scheme or trying to zoom into a specific area of the screen, and this actually created a bit more complexity in navigation or presentation of the UIs, we tried to overcome this by creating a bespoke and purpose-built application that takes care of this and also simplifies a lot many of the settings that the user had to do in order to get the interface to be large or high contrast and things like that. So the idea was the app to be very easy to be accessed. Obviously, channel 555 and the 5 has the bump on the most of the remote controls, so it's a tactile feedback for visually impaired users. We also removed most of the complications around setting up the UI to suit particular needs. The third one was definitely to make it as easy as possible, so no additional buttons, very easy navigation, left, right, up and down, and OK was the main goal to be able to complete any journey around the UI. And the last one, which is also very important, was to kind of try to look into how a normal EPG is structured and try to extract the main components of it and present them in a way that it's more clear and more easy to navigate and more readable for the users. So one of the main important things in this discovery phase was to try to get as much insight from people and organizations who are dedicated to serving impaired users. And we contacted Digital Accessibility Center, DAC, to try to get some insight from them. They brought a couple of people who were also impaired users, and we had several sessions with them, trying to understand how people with accessibility needs interact with TV interfaces. And so increased text and elements were obviously one of the most important parts. The navigation was also very important because an EPG is a complex system to navigate around, and simplification of that would be also very important, and also creating a clear identification of the variety of programs that you can get on the EPG. So you can see in the slide here a couple of the very early designs, and these are the first iterations, and it's very clear here that we were just thinking about presenting the EPG in a different way, also possibly changing the colors and enlarging the fonts. But these were quickly dismissed because, presenting now and next, for example, on an EPG, if you apply a filter to present, for example, programs with audio description only, you have gaps because not all the time programs have audio descriptions. And also the colors and the font sizes were not sufficient to create enough contrast and to be big enough to suit a variety of visual impairments. Next one is for Gavin to explain a little bit more about our interaction with the agencies.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so during the discovery phase and iteration phases of the development that Alex went through, we were in constant conversations with different agencies, RNIB, Action for Hearing Loss, Scope, just to get some expert insight into what would be the best delivery for this accessible TV guide. And once we had a development underway, and we thought that the UX was working well, we commissioned AbilityNet to run a set of user testing sessions where we got a group of people with varying impairments, visual, oral, and cognitive, to basically give a real-ish, we faked a TV living room at their lab, so they could use the app in the most natural way possible, and to really sort of make sure that the user experience was beneficial, and especially the first user experience, that they were able to go through, set their settings, and go straight into the guide and start using it. So one of the key things that came out of that was the need to actually confirm that first user experience and actually the value proposition with some more information. So we commissioned a video, which is in the resources, which is a demo video, and it'll be added to the front of the app on channel 555 next year. We reference it on the website. That it's on the website through the text-to-speech service that we have. And we hope that will help people really get an understanding of how to use it, what benefit will be for them, and keep it refreshed in their mind that 555 will be there for them. I'll pass it back to Alex.
Yes, so in this slide you can see a couple of the later iterations of the UI, and obviously quite a big change from the initial ideas. Probably the biggest impact was actually how we present the EPG, and we call this deconstructed EPG because it's not the traditional table you see on basically every device. It's laid out in a horizontal, very easy to scroll way, and for each channel the programs are laid out in a vertical list, which allows us to, when the users apply filters for audio description, for example, or titles or sign language, they will see only these programs, so that list can be easily collapsed and expanded depending on what kind of filters the user needs. This also allowed us to significantly increase the size of all the elements. So imagine this on a 42-inch or large TV. Fonts are a lot bigger, maybe twice or even 3 times bigger than what a normal TV UI will present usually. And also the contrast as well. We made everything with at least 7:1 contrast to conform with WCAG's specifications. Most of the elements actually has a lot higher contrast of foreground to background. And when we were confident that this is the right track to go, the focus, we turned our focus to another very, very important aspect of an accessible UI, text-to-speech, to be able, the application is able to actually read out loud any focused element on the screen, but compared to traditional solutions, which we do that for the web or even in the operating system, Windows and phones as well, they have such integrated features. We tried to make each element with a specific set of an audible description that will first give the users the idea what they have focused on and the information about it, but also make a small pause and give them additional navigational hints. For example, you can go up, you can go left, you can go right, and what is going to happen when you do this. And it will allow for novice users to actually a bit slowly to progress into how the UI works. And if you are experienced, you can just skip through these without having to listen to them. And this helped a lot into how different users can accommodate for the UI. Next one is for Gavin.
Yeah, so the text-to-speech side of things was a very large UX and also technical task that we had to overcome. And we utilized, for the technical delivery, we utilized cloud-based technologies using AWS and Google Cloud technologies to give us the control of the text-to-speech service, so we can develop it and refine it over time, and not having to rely on any of the device text-to-speech services and technologies that are implemented on the devices, which can become quite stale over time. So this is a cloud-based service. It's contextual, as Alex mentioned, so it gives hints and directions to users. And the reason why we added that area on is because this product is for a broad user base. So we're covering everyone who has partial visual impairments and hearing impairments to someone who is potentially quite blind or quite deaf. So we wanted to make sure that the features covered all of those bases, and were able to deliver on the requirements, on the Ofcom requirements that we needed. And we're really pleased to confirm the text-to-speech service after a lot of development and a lot of work internally. We were engaged with another expert at the DAC to review what we had done already. And his quote, which is on the screen now, is a massive testament to all the work that Alex and I and the rest of the team did. And we're really proud of that response so far. I'll hand it over to Alex. Oh, and that's it. So we did have another slide, but we had to remove it. So thank you very much, and look forward to any questions.
Gavin, Alex, thank you so much. I can only imagine how much work's gone into that. Really good work. We had a question in, I think I probably know the answer to this, but I'll let you answer it. How will you produce the audio description, and are you managing it in-house or outsourcing it?
So the Accessible TV Guide is basically a window into the content that our content providers can deliver into Freeview. So they have the responsibility to make sure all the content is accessible with audio descriptions, subtitles, and sign language, etc. So the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, etc. are delivering that side of things, and we're delivering a discovery portal for that content. Great. And the second question was, what will be the lead time to updating schedule changes? So I guess, is it live? It's absolutely live. Absolutely, it's live. So it uses the data that we manage for all of our EPGs that we deliver on all the devices. So Freeview Play is a set of requirements that we deliver to manufacturers that they implement. We have also some technologies, metadata technologies and EPG systems that the manufacturers then deliver into those devices. So the content on the EPG in Channel 5 is absolutely 100% up to date every day. Excellent. Gavin, Alex, very, very interesting. I encourage you all to take a look at this. And also, it goes without saying that, we're only taking a snapshot of these subjects this week and today. There's a lot more depth behind it. So please continue the conversation after today. And now we've got an opportunity to have a discussion with our panel. First one for me, actually, is kind of more about the why and consumers' needs. And actually, are consumers' needs changing significantly as we throw technology at them? And is, the consumer behaviour that we've seen change over the last kind of 8 months, do we think that's here to stay, or do we think that there'll be a kind of a return to, as things slightly more were in the past? And I wonder whether one of the psychologists might want to have a stab at this initially.
Yeah, I'm happy to have a first stab at that one. I've been asked it quite a few times during lockdown. Are all the behaviours that we used to exhibit history now, and we're all going to live our lives just through screens online the whole time? And my answer's been pretty consistently no. We are intrinsically social animals, and we depend on social interaction, seeing each other's eyes properly, smelling each other, sharing a space together. And it's fundamental to our well-being and our connection to other people. So I think there's going to be, once lockdowns are properly over and it's safe and people perceive it as safe, everyone's going to be back out in the world again. But they're not going to discard all the behaviours that they have evolved to and adapted to over lockdown. So I think in terms of carbon reduction, there's going to be less travel for business unless it's really, there's going to be a lot more of it taken over by video conferencing and VR experiences. And in terms of content, people are now used to accessing different sorts of content. So TV has always been popular, but and engagement in TV has increased, if anything, during lockdown. But live performance, live theatre, I think, is also the appetite that people have got for that because they've experienced it through lockdown, I think, will prevail.
Excellent, excellent. So please keep sending your questions in if you've got questions for the presenters today. The other question I had is how do you make your product development process as inclusive as possible, and also, I guess, incorporate all user needs, everything from the great accessibility strides that Freeview and Dish UK presented, but also, making sure that the more moral and net zero challenges and corporate responsibilities are built in right the way through to the kind of psychological needs of users. I just wondered whether Alex or Dan might have a bit of a view of how we begin to build in sustainability into our normal product development processes.
Well, Alex, do you want to go first? Oh.
Yeah, please.
I'm happy to take it then. Yeah. So from the work that we do with our partner organizations, we see that there is an immense interest from within the organizations to understand the relationship between design processes and the impact on carbon emissions. So things that are affecting the delivery of the service, but then also increasingly the content itself, because obviously the decisions that the audiences take after consuming content, they can have a far bigger consequence on environmental impact than just that of the energy consumption while watching it. Yeah. So both of these things are seeing an increase of attention throughout. Some of the practices that we are observing, they're largely just making sustainability more tractable. I think that's where we are at the moment. We are not of the opinion that sustainability can or ever should replace profitability or user experience, right? This is not what this is about, but we are putting tools into the hands of the people building these services that make sustainability measurable and manageable, so that it can be considered. Because sometimes there are alternative options that are presented when you're taking a design decision, and they might not compromise cost or user experience, but you can have a positive impact on the environment, and that's exactly what we're after.
Great. Apologies, I meant to say Will, not Alex. Will, do you want to come in there briefly? Do you think we're likely to get a kind of an expose like the motor industry's had? We're going to have to man up to this at some point, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So through our work, not through DIMPACT, but through the Responsible Media Forum, we've actually sort of produced this climate pact for media companies, which has a sort of an operation or their own emissions component to it. But really what we see in terms of incorporating sustainability into products is really the content itself. We see, as Dan mentioned, sort of encouraging and sort of showing people sustainable lifestyles, I think, is probably one of the bigger impacts, and what we've referred to as the brain print, if you like. So that's where that's kind of what we see as sort of the key part if you're looking into sort of design and delivering content. And if you just Google Climate Media Pact, you'll see kind of in detail what those commitments are. And yeah, so there's quite a few big UK media companies signed up. So yeah, I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you're interested.
Great, thank you. And coming back to the kind of Digital UK preview team, one of the questions that's come up is how do we kind of build accessibility into every product design, and is is it something that should we begin to see with things like object-based video in Vision sign-in, being able to switch it on and off, being able to use object-based audio to tailor audio, etc. Do you think that should become business as usual for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Accessible TV Guide is probably one of the most important products for us as a company, but we are definitely looking in the future and working with our partners as well to try to implement this from the get-go, to purposely build it in the next generation devices, and as well Ofcom and the other government and government entities will continue to push further accessibility to be implemented on a variety of devices. We see a future where these experiences are specifically designed and purposefully built inside the device and can be switched on very easily, and can be customized by the users very easily, and so they can take full advantage of that.
Excellent, thank you. Leah, Johnny, do you think there's always been this kind of line of kind of simple, great user experiences are actually often super accessible as well, and there's a kind of middle ground that something that's highly accessible is usually super usable as well, isn't it? And do you see a kind of a greater emphasis on this now, particularly with the focus on being much more inclusive than we ever were in society? Leah?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's definitely true that when products are easy to use, they are much more enjoyable. That reduction of friction is really important. But thinking about, that accessibility being built in at each step of the way, I think, it's really important to think about your design process, because as Gavin and Alex have spoken about, they tested the platform on a range of users, so they understood the kind of the different needs that people have, and that's really important in terms of sampling. You want to make sure that you are testing your designs on a range of different users to understand which elements are going to be impactful and where people find friction. I think one of the assumptions that perhaps we make, that things are going to be easy to use for the majority of our users, but actually that's not always the case. And when we're working on technology products that are kind of at the very sort of cutting edge, we need to really be quite critical of our own assumptions that we hold, and that's something that through the impact model and through the methods that we've developed, we really encourage companies to really kind of test their products from a range of different perspectives, in the early days in the formative testing, and also in terms of how they evaluate their success criteria.
And the question of do we use the same terminology? You talk about audiences, consumers, customers. How do you segment that?
Richard, I'll come on in just a second. I just wanted to add one thing on your last question of inclusion and access and ease of use, and makes me think back to about 20 years ago. We got some Research Council funding to do a project on a speaking EPG, talking program guide, and it was very hard technically to do at the time, and everyone was like, well, that's just for people who can't see the screen, and so why would anyone be interested in it? And fast forward 20 years, and we're now looking, and we have Alexa at home or Google at home, and Siri on our phones, and we talk to our devices, and it's a brilliant example of technologies that actually are inclusive, like voice interaction, can really facilitate better user experience for the general users too.
Thank you. And just come back to my question over kind of audiences, consumers, customers. Are we mixing terminologies, or is there a clear view as to where they sit? Leah?
Yeah. Yeah, I can take that one. I think, it's sometimes important not to get too hung up on the semantics, but if we're looking at it from a sort of from a marketing perspective, I suppose, if we think about audiences, that might be sort of the wider group that you may reach. They may be engaged with your brand, they may have heard of you, but they may not have a sort of fully direct relationship. Whereas if we think of customers, that's a much more direct relationship, and that doesn't have to be an exchange in terms of financial exchange. It might be, today it's a much more attention-driven economy. So it might be that it's your attention and your engagement that you're exchanging. And, your customers can potentially then increase your audience pool, because if I particularly like what you're doing, I might recommend it to a friend, and therefore that friend may not have heard of you, but now because I'm recommending you, they have. So it kind of becomes part of your audience. So there are distinctions. So it is important to think about that when you're planning your messaging and your marketing campaigns.
Great, thanks, Leah. I think we've got some more questions coming in. Just bear with me. Sorry, I missed that. Accessibility has to become business as usual because the Equality Act dictates this, and the TV industry has to get used to using disability consultants from the start in product development. I guess that's from Jonathan Kay, who's a very active member of the TV accessibility group, and I couldn't agree more. I think the more we get, we're inclusive in our development teams, the better. So a very, very well made point. Jonathan, thank you. Okay, so I ask a question to the panel now on kind of why do we do this? So what's the real driver for us, and why do we as companies and as an industry do it? And I think maybe I'll ask that question initially to Will. What's the driver?
I think, well, for us in DIMPACT, the driver is really this sort of increasing trend for companies to have to consider the sort of the carbon emissions associated with their full footprint, which extends beyond their own organization. And for digital media companies, that's sort of all the way through to end user devices. And that's, as I said, for target setting, but also for sort of any kind of offsetting, and just basically just understanding and getting a handle on this data. I think right. Hopefully I understood your question correctly.
Yeah, I'm not going to phrase it very well. Gavin, why should we be driving accessibility and accessible guides?
From a Freeview and Digital UK point of view, it's to make sure that content is accessible, and television is accessible to everyone. We as Freeview, we run the largest platform in the UK. We want to make sure that we are able to deliver content to everyone that wants to watch the content in the way that they want to watch it. Making in design principles with regard to accessibility and extreme usability is going to help that process. Getting people to the content, enabling them to watch it in the way they want, helps drive more content and keeps an ecosystem within the UK really buoyant and continue that buoyancy.
Great, thank you. And final question, just very, very quickly to a couple more members of the panel, is what can we do as an industry to kind of drive making a difference? And Johnny, what can we do?
Yeah, so I think the main thing that the industry can do is engage in research with audiences of all abilities really early on in the design and development process. So whether it's for a piece of content, whether it's for a new app, a new interface, a new piece of hardware, the earlier you engage with your users, the more satisfying an experience you'll be able to deliver them, and the more commercially successful you'll be as a commercial entity delivering value to your audiences, consumers, or customers.
Great. And Alex? What can you do to make a difference?
I would say it might sound simple, but just putting out great products in front of people, because when you do that, people start to appreciate, even if they might not see the immediate value to it, over time, especially if the product is very usable and serves the purpose it was built for, and people are happy with it, they will start to carry it on and give it to tell others about it, and just spread the word, let's say. And that will help great products to actually become the norm and the standard in the industry.
Thank you, Alex. What a brilliant answer. And finally, Leah, what's your view? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, was that to me, Richard?
Yeah, sorry. What's your view on kind of, what we can do to make a difference in the future?
Yeah, I think, building on what Johnny said, obviously it is really important to engage with users. And I think, as I've been working in the industry, I've also noted that there's been much more engagement with assessing the sort of ethical impact of the products and services that you're putting out. There's many more techniques such as consequence scanning, which was introduced by .Everyone, responsible technology think tank last year. And so it's really good to see these kind of design techniques that think about the sort of the macro impact of your products and services as well. So thinking about the direct impact on users, but also thinking more broadly about the societal impact. So I think the more that these sorts of techniques can be baked into the design process, then I think we're really on the right track.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of our presenters today, Leah, Johnny, Will, Dan, Gavin and Alex. And Georgie and the team who worked so hard behind the screens. There's a lot goes on that you don't see. Thanks to everyone who joined us today and for those viewing on demand. And of course, today, as I said, has just been a snapshot into the work of our panelists, the wider industry and the things that we do at the DTG. So we're very, very keen to continue the conversation after this. So whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on demand, please stay in touch and let's continue this discussion and see how we can develop high impact products for the future. That wraps up our very first Future Tech Week that's been held virtually. Remember, if you missed any, they're all available on demand on our website /webcasts. And please look out for the all-important Future Tech report that is going to summarize everything that's been discussed this week. That'll be available during the coming weeks. So thank you, take care, and we'll see you soon.